I went on a Mormon mission and I married my companion. I've gotten a lot of questions about the language learning aspect of a mission, so I'll explain that. Do missionaries come in with like a prior knowledge of the language that they're assigned to teach in? Most of the time, no. I would say for the white missionaries, a lot of the time, if you have like a native speaker of a specific language, like my wife already spoke Spanish, was her first language, so she got called to speak Spanish on her mission. Just, that made sense. But for a lot of missionaries like me, who came from, English-speaking households, no, most of the time there's no background. I think, there are some exceptions if they took the language in high school, for example, so if you consider that a background, then maybe. But for me, I took sign language and French in school growing up, so I had zero background of Spanish whatsoever. How proficient you get, I think, depends on your learning style. So if sitting down in a classroom for 11 hours a day, studying and having the language spoken to you and, just being as immersed in it as they can, then you probably learn it pretty quickly. If that's not your learning style, then I think it probably is a little bit more difficult. They give you all sorts of tips and tricks about learning. So, for example, they do tell you that if you read the Book of Mormon in your mission language out loud, it will help you learn the language quicker. I can attest to this, that even if it didn't necessarily help me learn the language quicker, it solidified my pronunciation. So that was huge. I couldn't roll my R's before my mission, and one of my MTC teachers told me to read the Book of Mormon out loud with a pen between my teeth. And by doing that, it strengthened certain muscles in my tongue or something that made it so that I could roll my R's, and now I can do it just fine. The way that the languages are taught is very much structured around teaching the gospel. So you're not just learning basic Spanish or the most common phrases. You're not really learning that. You're learning the verbs, the vocabulary that matters to what you're going to be teaching. The very first thing that they usually teach you is how to say a prayer in that language. So you learn that first. They help you memorize certain scriptures in your mission language. You'll sing songs in class, some of the church hymns in Spanish. And then you begin teaching lessons in Spanish. And most of the time it's like a Spanglish, so you'll throw in little words that you've learned in class. And then the rest you're como se dice, I don't know how to say that, and then you say it in English and the teacher would, tell you what it is or whatever. So it's very much broken, but they do force you to use it. They force you to practice. Coming out of the MTC, a lot of people feel really confident and they're feeling really good about it and they really think they have a handle, and then they're put in front of their first person that they're teaching in the field and they're like, this is not the Spanish they taught me in the MTC. That definitely was what happened for me. I remember the very first person I spoke to. We were standing on some lady's doorstep and we were speaking with her, and I had no idea what was going on. I was still very much in the phase of learning a language where everything I was hearing, I was actively translating in my head from, Spanish to English. And that's exhausting, and that takes a lot of work, and it gets you behind. And so if you lose one part of it, you're lost the rest of the conversation. So I was completely lost. And my trainer was a native Spanish speaker, and so she was, totally keeping up with her and had no problems. But I was lost, and I remember I was honestly, falling asleep standing up. And, I remember definitely feeling like this was not the Spanish that they taught me. I did learn really quickly, though, all things considered. I really wanted to learn, and actually, we can talk a little bit about this later, but my patriarchal blessing, for those who don't know what that is, it's honestly, the best, most simplified version to explain what it is sort of it's like fortune telling. I don't really know how to, that really minimizes it, for the Mormon church, it's very much a special experience, it's very sacred. But it's a specific blessing that you get from a priesthood leader called a patriarch, and they are called to give these blessings to tell you what tribe of Israel you are from. You can look that up if you're curious what that is, and that's biblical. And then to give you a blessing that's unique to you, to tell you about maybe some gifts and talents that you can strengthen in your life or ones that you already have. Sometimes they'll tell you things about your future. They'll mention marriage, children, things like that. And one of the things in my patriarchal blessing was that I would be blessed to learn of many cultures and languages and peoples in my life. I didn't really know what the cultures and languages and people part meant to begin with, and I still don't think I did as a missionary. As I've gotten older and since then, I definitely know, what that meant and, signified for my future. But I took that seriously, and I did, see the language part, and I thought this was a perfect opportunity to use that, and God was going to bless me with the gift of tongues, and I would learn Spanish quickly if I, dedicated myself and worked really hard. Not every missionary is called to speak a language that is not their native language as a missionary. You can pretty much be called to serve in any language. I had a friend who spoke Mongolian. She went to Mongolia, and yeah, it can really be anything depending on where you go and wherever there's a need for the language.